Okay, so for some reason, there's been a lot of people online talking about the old fairy tale Sleeping Beauty. A lot of people are now using it as a springboard to talk about consent between men and women. The main story or joke or meme or what have you being that the prince actually sexually assaulted our princess, and isn't that a bad thing? And isn't he the bad guy and everything? And, you know, to all the magpies who keep sort of repeating this sort of dumb meme, you all realize that the alternative was death, right? I don't know what the Good Samaritan laws in the Kingdom of Far, Far Away are about, but I'm pretty sure this one should count. But just in case it's not, I'm giving broad consent here. If I'm ever in a coma and the only way to wake me up is to kiss me, anyone has permission to do that. But anyway, that's not even the real point. The overall point of Sleeping Beauty is not a story about consent. The overall point of Sleeping Beauty is these broad, large archetypes that fairy tales typically deal in. So, the entire point of Sleeping Beauty is more about the animating power of true love. About how true love can take us from someplace dark and near death and reinvigorate us and reinvigorate our lives and live an even fuller life than we did beforehand. That's what Sleeping Beauty is about. It's not about consent, it's about love. I don't know if that's necessarily the healthiest position to have, in all honesty, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, I was mostly thinking about this because I had recently read the first Witcher book. Now, it's no secret that I'm not the biggest fan of the games. Mostly, I just think the gameplay is fucking terrible, and I have no idea how anyone can get past that to even get to the story. Maybe the story was transcendently brilliant in the games. I don't know. All I know is I thought the gameplay was so fucking boring that I would rather do anything than play it. And honestly, that probably bled into a lot of my opinions on the story in the game. So I might not necessarily be the best person to dissect the story in The Witcher 3. Ultimately, I could not get into the games at all. But enough people relentlessly badgered me to actually read the book, because, you know, the World of Warcraft method, if you can't put your lore in the game, give people homework! Listen, I don't need to read 300 books to know that the blue guys are good and the red guys are bad. Let's move on. But I finally relented and read the first Witcher book. And yeah, that point I made at the beginning about people completely missing the point to make a political statement, yeah, that's kind of what this feels like. Not necessarily a political statement, but the Witcher books are all basically just a bunch of short stories, mostly putting a dark twist onto various fairy tales. The main problem with that is they fundamentally miss the point of those fairy tales. What I feel best illustrates my point is this one short story that I really can't stop thinking about, mostly because I don't think the author put that much thought into it, and I think this was adapted into the TV series. But it was basically just a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Now, Beauty and the Beast is a pretty simple tale, all things considered. I'm sure you've all seen the Disney movie about it. The reason that Beauty and the Beast sticks with us so much is because it's another one of those types of fairy tales that tells a very classic story and a very human story in such a way. It's one of the only examples of a female monomyth. A typical monomyth, in some Jungian interpretations, I believe, is you take the male character, they descend into the feminine, or the chaotic, they tend to mean the same thing in Jungian archetypes, and then they come out more complete on the other side of their arc. You know, some fairly basic storytelling techniques. Beauty and the Beast exists as kind of an inverse of that. It's one of the few examples of a female character who descends into the masculine and comes out better on the other side. Now, the main story going on in Beauty and the Beast is more about Belle's repressed sexuality. She starts the story in her father's home, then she moves out into the wider world, and the moment she learns to stop being afraid of the beast, which represents how she thinks about her own sexuality, that beast turns into a handsome prince. This is literally a story about how Belle needs to stop being afraid of her naughty thoughts. Now, what does The Witcher do when it adapts this story? Well, Belle is now a vampire, so now we have to try and associate what vampires are typically symbolically represent, which is hedonism and debauchery. And the beast has turned more into kind of like a werewolf. So from a subtextual level, what The Witcher is is that female sexuality needs to be repressed by a dominant male. I'm inclined to believe that was completely unintentional and mostly just down to the fact that the author wanted to throw in a dark twist to throw in a dark twist. Because I don't think this was intentional. It wasn't written like this was intentional in any sort of meaningful way. So, you know, if I see anyone complaining that I think this is what this story is actually saying, I don't. I just think that the author wasn't thinking about these sorts of things. And ultimately, that's my entire experience with The Witcher. It's a dark retelling of a lot of fairy tales that misses the entire point of the fairy tale. There's something to be said about taking your favorite kinds of stories and adding a twist to it in some way, but if you screw up with the subtext so much that it fundamentally doesn't mean what the story originally meant, then I gotta say, I just don't really care. Was the book terribly written in any sort of meaningful way? No, all the things that every booktuber will tell you about the Witcher books is mostly true. It's all fairly well written, it's not paced terribly or anything, it's just the subtext is just not there. I guess I should say the subtext is being butchered for the sake of its own story, which makes me wonder why you even bothered to do this. Apparently the author likes copying crap, so whatever.
Hold on there, Peter. I've got something even better.
Oh, really?
You bet. How would you like to take a half-pound of hamburger and make a delicious meal for the whole family with cheese?
What? I don't... I could just take cheese and put it on the thing he's doing.